Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today we are speaking with Kristin Knight. Kristin is a certified intimacy coach, Tantrika, yoga teacher, and voice for women's empowerment and sexual liberation. She has been guided to work with humanity in their conscious sexual awakening and calling forth that true personal power. Kristin is trained as a VITA Coach, which is vital and integrated tantric approach, and supports clients in transforming the relationship to their bodies, minds, and emotions to liberate trauma, self-limiting beliefs, and sexual blockages. I am really excited to learn more. Kristin, welcome to Fresh Blood. Please tell us a little bit about your story and the path that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to be here, Jolie. So how did this all begin? It's been quite a journey, but really, interestingly enough, a really pivotal point in my life and in my journey was when I was about 25 years old, and I had this impulse to do a 30-day vegan detox. And before that, I ate everything, you know what I mean? Just was very unconscious about meat eater. Yeah, all of it. And I just wasn't feeling great in my body. And I was reading some stuff and I just got called. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go 30 days vegan and just see what happens as an experiment. Mm-hmm. And it totally changed the trajectory of my life. And It's quite incredible.
Why?
But the moment that I started to become aware of what I was putting in my body and where things came from and how things were processed, and then how animals were treated. And it was just all these light bulb moments that started to go off as I went deeper and deeper into, just this very small part of my path, which was being vegan, which I ended up being vegan for 5 years. I'm no longer vegan, but what it really did was set me up to be conscious of what I consumed. And it deepened this connection I had with my body, with my mind. And wasn't too long after that, I found yoga. And so then that completely, again, was like this next level jump when I found yoga. Funnily enough, my mom was the one who brought me to my first yoga class, which also totally changed my life. She had a lot of arthritis.
I love mom and daughter yoga class.
Yes. So she was like, okay, I've heard about this thing called hot yoga. It's supposed to be really good for arthritis. I'm terrified to go by myself. Will you go with me? And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll do hot yoga. I'd been eating really clean for the last few weeks. And I just thought, oh yeah, that's perfect. Vegan yoga. Maybe I'll see what this feels like. So we go to this first hot yoga class. And I don't know if you've ever done hot yoga before. We kind of came out of it.
I'm scared too. I'm going to be honest. I love yoga, but I've been scared of the hot yoga. So tell me what this first experience is like.
Like nothing I'd ever experienced before in my life. It was the most hardest, the most like mind-bending, body-bending experience. They talk for 90 minutes nonstop. Like you go into this trance where you're sweating and everyone around you is sweating, and you feel like you're going to die multiple times of the class. But what the ethos of hot yoga, or why it's so hard, is okay, kill yourself for 90 minutes. So then the rest of your day is easy. And that's what it became. So me and my mom, we walk out of this 90-minute yoga class. We look at each other and we're like, what was that? Like it was, and this is back in 2007. What was that? And we're like, we don't know, but we know that we're coming back tomorrow, even though it was so hard. But the feeling that you got after really pushing yourself through this incredibly challenging process was just elation, freedom, accomplishment, all these things that I never thought that I could do, being so challenged for 90 minutes came as a result of that. And after a few more classes, my mom planted the seed. She's, I think this is what you should do. I think you should do this teacher training. And once that seed was planted, I was like, okay, it was really this moment where I started to find myself, find who I truly was, find my essence. Before that, it was corporate, a little bit of corporate work, a little bit of sales and marketing, waitressing, just really trying to find my flow in my early 20s
Figuring it out.
and figuring it out. Exactly. And so after we did that first yoga class and I made the decision, I went to teacher training in 2009. And I then taught yoga, hot yoga, traveling the world. It took me to all these incredible
Wow.
places and I left because I was in a relationship that was like, okay, I guess we're going to get married and have kids and I settle down and this and that. And I just knew that there was something more for me. And after I did the yoga teacher training, that was 9 weeks of hot yoga day in and day out, which was incredible. Another story. But after that, yeah, it was really where I got to go out and experience the world through this discipline, through this path of yoga. And so I did that
This is
for,
amazing. I'm so curious. How did you get to travel the world teaching yoga? Please tell me.
Okay. What's really interesting is that with the hot yoga or Bikram yoga back in the day, I think Bikram yoga's had its golden years. It's not so popular anymore. But back in the day, because everyone that does Bikram yoga is certified at the same training, and Bikram yoga studios were all over the world. So the moment you become a Bikram yoga teacher, you can travel the world from studio to studio and get jobs because you're certified in Bikram yoga. So if the studio is Bikram yoga, you can just start, if there's positions available, you can just start teaching at any of those places. So it was great. I lived in so many different places. My travels took me to Europe and I did some traveling and teaching around there. And another interesting moment and pivotal part of my journey, which has actually got me to the women's sexual empowerment and intimacy coaching that I'm doing now, was when I was in Portugal. Oh, no, not when I was in Portugal. I specifically went to Portugal to live in an intentional community. And this is also when it was a vegan community and they were living on the land and doing permaculture and studying about consciousness and all these things I was super into. So I arrive at this intentional community called Tamara, and it was very different to, let's say, the brochure was like, come learn permaculture and do your eco design. So it was an eco design village certificate. So learn how to build an eco village. And that was all part of it. But there was this other part. There's this other part where they studied sexuality and relationships under a spiritual context. And they were actually more of a free love, learn to love without jealousy, love without fear, love without possession. And the whole community in and of itself was this kind of sacred sexuality, free love experiment. And that was just so mind-blowing to me that they're like communities studying how to do love, how to do relationship, how to end the war between man and woman. Because what one of their tenets really is like, if we can end the war between man and woman or our interpersonal relationships, that's how we end war on the planet, because the micro is just a reflection of the macro. And so for me, and so that's where it also became political activism as well. If we can actually learn to live in harmony and peace and in alignment with all beings, then, there won't be war on the planet. There won't be suffering on the planet. And so I ended up staying for 4 months, really going deep into what is love? What is sexuality? Oh, you mean my sexuality is sacred? And this is actually what completely changed the dialogue for me around understanding my body, my pleasure, my sexuality, the way that I love, the way that I engaged with men in just a whole new way. It was extremely healing. And looking back on relationships and using my sexuality to get the attention from men, to feel validated, to feel worthy. And so having to really look at those patterns and dismantle and let go a lot of that conditioning and find the sacredness within myself, my sacred erotic energy within myself, and really finding so much power through that, because it was a reclamation of kind of taking it back and realizing that my sexuality, my pleasure, my body is for me first and foremost. It's not to attract a man so that I feel worthy, so that I feel okay. So that was, I could talk about my experience there for the next year. But that's really like it's like a little synopsis. But when I tell my story, I can't not tell about this incredibly pivotal transformational 4 months that just blew my mind open. And it was just such a deconditioning process. I was able to let go of so much conditioning that was actually very disempowering and start to reclaim my power through my sacred sexuality, which was really, really huge. And so
I
I
am
didn't
loving
become,
this.
yeah, good. So
Yes,
I didn't
yes.
become a coach straight after that, but then I continued to travel and teach yoga and this, but I got to a point after teaching 8 years full-time group yoga classes. Alongside, I've been studying this on my own, self-studying, reading all the books and following all
Mhm.
the teachers and doing a lot of workshops and things. And so it was about at the very beginning of 2018 is when I decided to leave the world of yoga behind and really wanted to dive more deeply into this work in a way to serve women and serve the empowerment of women.
That's great. So that's when you started to go full force. Now, I'm curious with this 4 months in expending in Portugal, it sounds
Mhm.
like an absolutely amazing experience. How did you notice your own self change after that experience? What did you see in
Yes.
yourself?
There was this activation of life force, and there was also a deepening of my spirit, my spirituality, my spiritual essence. Like I started to connect to myself at a level that was so much deeper than what I looked like, how much I weighed, comparing myself to all the other people, all this
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. That is where I got to let a lot of that go and find feel connected to myself at a level that I'd never experienced before. And alongside yoga as
Wow.
well, it was like I started to really connect to the essence of my soul, my infinite divine nature that has always existed and always will exist.
That must have shifted so much in your life because that's shifting the way you're feeling inside
Mm.
of your body. So that must have affected everything for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it just completely changed my outlook on life. And the other thing that it really changed was that there isn't just one way to do life. There isn't one way to do relationship. There isn't one way to love. There isn't one way you don't have to do like the marriage, kids, house, mortgage, one, all of that. I was like, wow,
Yes.
there's so many other ways to live. And of course, traveling opened you up to that and just meeting lots of different people along the way. It was just this huge broadening of the understanding of what's possible and how we can actually create
Right.
whatever we want.
No,
Yeah.
there are so many ways to live, and we can create what we want. And we're not really taught that growing up. At least our generation wasn't fully taught that. So
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. Now, through all of this, because you've done a lot in your life and you've learned different disciplines that have really
Hmm.
obviously helped you in what you're doing, what would you
Yeah.
say have been one or two of your greater successes in life, and what did you learn from it?
Mm. I think so. I think backing myself and making the decision to turn what I'd been studying for so long, like into now what I'm doing for a living, was huge. And what I learned was this whole thing of backing myself, like how to really back myself and
Mhm.
to own what I want to do and to take that kind of leap of faith. And
Mhm.
the way that I was able to do that is learning how to slow down and be present in my body.
Mm. Oh, that's
Right.
something so many of us don't know how to do.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you share with us really quick? How do you have a way that you do that? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of people out there who probably have never really taken that time to really get present. And I always say this because I had the experience where someone did this with me and I felt that. I was like, I don't think I've ever experienced this.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe like I wasn't fully present for all of these years.
Yes, yes, exactly. And that it's such a different experience of life when we slow down and when we get really present. So, back to the greatest success, I think like one of my greatest successes would be actually learning how to do that and how to do it consistently. Because what that enabled me to do was to listen and feel where the energy of life was taking me. So, yoga was a huge part of that. One of my greatest successes being able to trust myself and trust that if I have an impulse and the impulse is carrying me somewhere, that I can trust that because I've slowed down, I've gotten really present, and I'm in my body. So that's another thing, like even from being a yoga teacher, right? So our breath can only ever be in the present moment, and our body can only ever be in the present moment. So learning how to be in the body, which is just feeling sensations in the body, and learning how to breathe, know you're breathing in as you breathe in, know you're breathing out as you breathe out, and slow down, then we can feel ourselves more. We can listen more. We can, that golden thread, right? Our path that's like calling us places, our soul that's calling us places. It's very hard to listen to if we're in here at going a million miles a minute, either thinking about the future or reviewing the past. It's very hard to hear what's alive in the moment and where the energy is pulling us, where that golden thread is pulling us.
It's so true. It's so true. Because like I said, I was very much that person living up here and learning how to bring it down and become present. It was a life shift. It was a huge change and a blessing. Absolutely. So what about the flip side? I like both sides of the question. What about the failure, the challenge, the obstacle that you had to deal with and what you learned from that?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I feel like one of the biggest challenges, and especially over the last few years building a business, is because I've been really, when I decided to walk the path of, or a path of spiritual awakening, of consciousness, of not just identifying with this 3D world, but really feeling what the part of me, like I said, that's always been there, the kind of soul essence of myself. That comes with a lot of like letting go of identity and dissolving the ego and to get more to feel myself at a deeper and more true level. And at the same time, I was building a business around, having to create a brand that was basically a brand about myself and having to be this forward facing person, identity, sharing a message. And it was it's such a paradox, right? To dissolve oneself, to let go of ego, and to connect to this deep kind of still essence, soul essence, and then having to do all the things of creating a brand and marketing myself out in the world. And that paradox put me into a lot of freeze, especially in the beginning. So biggest obstacle, existential paralysis, like really trying to understand. Do you relate to that phrase? Kind of
Yeah.
paralyzed by
I know
your
many people,
existential crisis.
often.
Exactly. So one of my biggest obstacles has been, this kind of existential crisis, existential paralysis going, but none of this matters. And I'm a soul. And then also being like, but I have to do all this stuff and this marketing stuff and this business stuff and really sell myself and show who I am to the world in order to actually do what I want to do, which is coach and serve and help other women to feel sexually and spiritually empowered. So what I learned from this, from slipping into existential crisis again and again, was that couple of things. Both can be true. I can hold the paradox. I can hold that both of these realities are true, that none of this matters, and that I am not my ego, and I'm disidentified with my body or with the human experience, say, and then also to fully embrace the human experience and market myself and show myself. And being able to hold both at once has been what really got me through that, as well as playfulness. Also looking at the whole thing like a game, like just keeping it lighter and playing with it and playing with this whole marketing myself as a sexual empowerment coach, but then also knowing
I
it's
like
just a beautiful light game as well and not taking it so seriously. Of
That's
course,
fantastic. That's really good advice for everybody. That's how you should take it. It should feel that way. It makes all the difference in what you're doing and how it feels, which will result in how your outcome is, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not, I take my work very seriously, but the whole kind of persona that we have to put online these days I don't have to identify with that so much. I can keep that playful and light and just, it's like a big experiment.
I really like
And
that.
to
I'm going to
not
apply
make
that to my own social media too, because I feel that. I really do feel that. So I like the playful aspect. I'm gonna take it there.
I love that. It's just a big experiment. And just to also look at life like this big, crazy human experiment. And so that That means we can hold a lot of things to be true at once, even if they feel diametrically opposed.
That's good. There are so many things that are diametric opposed. Really, inside of myself, there's so many things that are
Exactly.
so
So then
both,
running,
yes, both things can be true. Yes, it's okay.
exactly, running a spiritually based or soul based business, you have to have a lot of room for a lot of things to be true at once, because again, it's really playing in this world of capitalism, how to create in this paradigm of capitalism that we are in, but to really still hold the soul-based business and bringing our soul out into the world through this kind of lens, which doesn't always feel super great. So it's like how to really hold both, and then finding what's authentic to yourself and just sharing from this very authentic place has also really has supported me. Not trying to change myself to fit this particular brand or this or that, but really trying to feel my authentic essence and express it lightfully and playfully.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. So what do you think is key to continued success in life, to having that fulfilled life, if you will?
Continued success. I would say perspective. That's what I want to say. So keeping this perspective. So it's a segue in or what we were just talking about. Not taking things like if things are super dire or really scary or overwhelming, whether that's in your successes or your failures, understanding that we are here for a blip and just to keep that perspective. So the way that I really get perspective in my life is being out in nature. So honestly, holding perspective and going to the desert and staying up all night looking at the desert sky with all the stars in the sky, or watching the sunset into the ocean, or climbing to the top of a mountain. Those are so important to my success because it gives me the perspective. And I don't then slip into whether it's an existential freeze or feeling really scared by some content that I'm going to put out or something like that, because I know it's like we're here so quick. And we are on a molten bull orbiting a giant star in outer space. And I think that's really important to remember when things feel too big or too scary or too overwhelming.
I completely agree. It's so important. It puts us in our place. It reminds us where we are and who we are and what life is all about. There's so much bigger. There's so much bigger out there than us.
Exactly.
And
We're so tiny.
it is an important perspective, because all of those things that are so big in our lives that are just taking up all that space, you're right, having that perspective and putting them back down to really where it is, it puts everything, it aligns everything back into your life with that right way. And I do the same. For me, I need to go into nature. And when I'm all upset and worked up, if I go out to nature and just spend that little time, it brings it all back down, relaxes it all, puts into perspective, and you realize it's going to be okay. You can work whatever it is and get through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you connect too. That's just been so key. So key.
So is there any advice that you would give someone in the 40 plus category who might be somewhat struggling right now to figure out their right place in life or their next move, if you will? Is there anything that you would share?
I would say like networking has been really great. And it's not just like this term networking, but if someone has an inkling to try something new, or to change paths or looking for an opportunity, find other people that are already doing it and just have a conversation with them and really understand, what does that day-to-day look like? Does that really align with how I want to spend my day-to-day? And just have conversations with people exactly like we're doing now, and even how we connected. I think that is, It's just, you never know what doors are going to open from conversations. You never know who you're going to meet on the street, who you're going to meet at the coffee shop, who you're going to meet on Facebook. And there's so much to learn from each other. Yes. And I just feel like continue to have conversations with people, stay open. So just really try to stay open and like eyes open, not just eyes open, but heart open, body open. Like there's so much there, I think, that we don't even see or don't even know that we could explore or experience because we have our blinders on or our hearts closed or these kind of things. So I just say to try and open and to have conversations with other people from this place of openness and deep listening.
The heart closed. That's a big one, because we talk about the blinders a lot, but we forget that a lot of times it's because the heart is closed. That's big. Yeah, we need to open up our hearts. Thank you for reminding of that.
Well, that's it. And in the disciplines that I've studied and in the kind of classical Tantra yoga discipline and traditions that I've studied, as well as the sacred sexuality, we have three main energy centers, especially for women. And that would be down in like our sexual center and our womb space, our heart center, and our throat center. So there's like an energetic connection between these three energy centers. So that's also where like opening our life force through our sexuality and allowing that to come through and open our heart, and then really finding our voice, especially as women, and opening the throat as well. We are experiencing life at I don't know, for me, it's been such a deeper experience of life when I've got these energy centers open. I know how to speak. My heart is open. I can really feel. And I've got this kind of life force, this vibration of aliveness that's running in my body that I can tap into. And so it's a very holistic experience of just walking through life feeling open.
So does that have to do with like your chakras, essentially?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you're like balancing the chakras inside, and that helps open up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really does. The first time I started meditating and with chakras and balancing the chakras and whatnot, it was amazing to me because it seemed to me as if everything got crisper. Like the trees were more beautiful, the mountains, like everything just seemed more. I don't know how to describe it.
Yes, more alive. Because I think you're connecting to the vibration, the essence, the energy of the thing, right? You're not just, it's not maybe just coming through the optical, but like you've got your own energy running. And so there's vibrational resonance with other things, I think at just a deeper level.
Is that something you work on with your clients? Do you help them with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely when the sexual centers close, that's cutting us off from our life force and from the energy that we pull in from the earth, right? So the lower chakras are our energy centers that connect us to the earth and to grounding. And this is our bodies, our sexuality, our personal power. And so when that's open and we start to get the life force moving and flowing, we can bring that up into the heart. And this can absolutely crack the heart open, and we can experience unconditional love, compassion, and these things that, and feel this sense of life is worth living with our heart open, and we can see the kind of love and everything that's there. And I think for me, a big, like I've done a lot of work on these two, and I feel like they're pretty, like my heart is always open, maybe too open sometimes. And I've definitely done a lot of work to reclaim my sexuality. And as we move up, this last piece has been my voice, and has been, like I said, as I've, started this business a few years ago, it's been like, okay, like I know all these things. I've had so much life experience, and I've had direct experience of a lot of these things. Now, how do I share it? How do I let myself be seen in it? How can I express myself? And that's taken work. I definitely had a really challenging time in high school, and just with low self-esteem, and in my early 20s and things, and just never really felt worthy of being seen, never felt good enough. And so it's definitely been I feel it's like the last bastion is to really open the throat, the voice, and express myself and be seen in this world as a leader and as a voice for myself and women's empowerment.
And that's what you're doing now.
That's what I'm doing beautiful. Now. Exactly.
I'm curious because it's so unique what you're doing, and your clients that come to you, they open up to you about a lot of things that a lot of people don't talk about. I'm curious if you've seen a common thread, if you will, between the people that you're working with, like a similar challenge that a lot of us out there are dealing with that you help people overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Our childhood stories are conditioning, really.
Awesome.
And how if we don't look at the stories that we were basically by the from 0 to 7 is when we're basically our parents are gifting us and burdening us with all of their
I
stuff, more or
don't know
less,
what I did to
right?
my kids.
Right. And
I
so, and I
hope
say
there's
gifting
more.
too, because of course, like they've gifted us with all the beautiful aspects, of course, but they've also burdened us with all their unresolved stuff as well. It's not, and this is not about
Mhm.
blame, right? I'm so past the part of blaming my parents. However, until if you've never looked at that before and you never actually start to identify this conditioning, that the stories that we started to create about ourselves when we were young, and it's no one's fault, right? We had to create stories to get love from our parents and to feel safe and provided for, and often we had to change who we were to fit the way that our parents then would praise us and love us and keep us safe and things like that. And so if we don't look at those stories, and we have to go in to our unconscious mind and start to reprogram, like via neural reprogramming and neuroplasticity, and we can create new stories and that are more empowering, but we have to get clarity on them first. And so if no, a lot of people that come to me, it's let's look at where this came from, like this particular piece that seems to be blocking you again and again from going for what you really want to go for. So the first part, the first thing that we have to do is we have to get clear. Oh, that's where that came from. That voice in your head, that's not your voice. That's the voice of your mother or your father or your best friend at 6 years old or this or that. And so when we can start to look at the stuff that is still, if we don't look at it, it still runs our lives. We're on this completely and totally unconscious programming that is actually blocking us from doing what we truly want to do and feeling how we truly want to feel and being in our full power and our manifestation power and our creative power and our spiritual power and our sexual power. So we get clear on what is actually the blocks. And then the next part to really integrating those things is to really find this radical acceptance, right? This deep radical acceptance for that story, yourself. Not about blaming parents, not about blaming yourself or shaming yourself. It's really learning how to notice it, accept it, and then creating a new relationship with these parts of yourself that are keeping you
Yes.
disempowered. So, yeah, that's
Mhm.
usually,
Oh,
if no
that's
one's done that type of work before, that's usually where we start. And from there,
mhm.
as we start to let all that stuff either fall away or we integrate it, or we just know where that voice is coming from that tells me that my body is wrong and shameful. That was my Catholic school upbringing, right? The body is
I feel that.
so I had to
Mhm.
look at that.
Mhm.
Like, why am I feel so like gross in my body? That was partly my religious conditioning. It was a lot around growing up in quite a superficial culture in South Orange County
Yes.
here in California, and just getting all these messages about this is the only way that you're supposed to look and act, and this is the amount of money that you should have, and all the kind of cultural and societal conditioning as well. And really, see, this is all then part of the awakening, realizing like, oh my god, like we don't have to subscribe to any of that stuff, and I
Yes.
can feel that inner
Liberating, isn't
spark.
it? Once you realize
Right,
it.
yes, I don't have to just subscribe to any of this. And so that's the kind of spiritual awakening
Yes.
that I love to also support people in discovering for themselves, and really having that direct
So
experience of
important.
awakening, yeah, from this kind of all these conditioned paradigms that basically tell us we're not good enough as we are, we're not worthy as we are. Capitalism is a huge piece of that as well. The whole thing doesn't really go unless we are constantly buying and consuming to try and make ourselves feel better or make ourselves feel worthy of doing what we want to do. So there's a lot, there's a lot in there, but that, yeah,
There's a
that
lot in
really,
that. I'm like, there's too much in
there's,
there for you to unpack. That was all really important. Just leave it at that. All really important. Let me ask you this. You've learned a lot in life, and I love all these different experiences that you've had because they brought all of these different insights and different perspective shifts that obviously have done wonderful things for your life and that I hope for a lot of people. But I'm curious, out of all the things that you've learned, what
Mhm.
would you say is been the most beneficial to your life?
I think it is that knowing myself at my deepest level. This is walking the path of self mastery. And I'm in no way a master of myself per se, but I- you've got to know, I had to know myself. I had to be able to really sit with myself. I did 10-day Vipassana, the 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat. And
Oh,
that is
wow.
just
How was that?
sitting with
Silent for 10
myself.
days.
Silent for 10 days, 10 hours a day of closed eye meditation. So that's a very, yes, that's definitely one path, but
Tell me
it's
what you
interesting.
got out of that.
Yeah, surrender, learning how to accept, because
Wow.
I just knew very quickly that if I'm fighting this the entire 10 days, like it
Mm.
might literally drive me insane. So it's like this, I popped through within the second day. It was like this pop through. Of course, there were still times I felt uncomfortable, but there was no resistance. So I wasn't resisting feeling
Mm.
uncomfortable. It was like, this is what you're doing. And to be able to really sit still and feeling that sense of commitment to discipline, or to, was this then surrender that I could experience, and just continuing to say yes to this experience, yes to this experience. So that's the one path. But then to balance that, I think we'll call that a very masculine practice, sitting in stillness, dissolving everything, and connecting to universal consciousness. I'd love to just also offer the listeners that I say a more feminine practice that can bring us to surrender and knowing yourself more deeply would be, say, for example, like ecstatic dance or breath work, or where we're moving and sounding. And it's a much more kind of expressive, embodied state where we're really in our bodies in the feminine and moving and dancing and singing and expressing. This is also very spiritual practice of the kind of feminine embodiment practices, whereas the masculine would be sitting in silence, dissolving everything and connecting to consciousness. Um, so both of those. So really learning how to, whereas like Bikram yoga, like masculine, very regimented, very structured, kind of push through this kind of thing. Whereas like a yin yoga practice or an ecstatic dance, this is really letting the feminine come through, which is,
I really find myself going for that yin.
yeah.
I think maybe I need a little
Which
more
is,
yang.
that's the balance though, right? So I've done so much yang practice, lots of meditation, lots of very strict yoga, all this kind of stuff. And so where I found myself now is resting much more in the feminine embodiment practices and feminine spiritual practices, which is song and being with other sisters and dance and getting barefoot in the earth and getting naked in nature. These things that kind of are more connecting us to the ground, whereas the other ones are a little more exalted to higher planes.
Yes. Now, with all of the work that you've done, I would imagine you haven't had any experiences with ageism per se, or have you?
I wouldn't say so much ageism, but I would definitely say with being a woman who is aging, right? So a woman in midlife. And I think this is a really important conversation to have, and that I'm actually constantly having with myself, dialoguing this with myself. A woman in my midlife, really having to rewrite that story, right, in my head, that I become less valuable as I age as a woman. The whole kind of the maiden and mother archetypes and the real kind of fetishes of the maiden and the kind of exile of the mother. And so these are the stories that I'm actually really working with within myself.
Mhm.
And that I
Mhm. This is
definitely
important.
think it is really important. And it's important to be in connection with other women in a similar age like that, so that we can dialogue about these things and we can start to define how aging gracefully looks like, and for ourselves, and that we're not starting to shame ourselves for aging, basically. And yeah, I'm in deep kind of conversation with myself around this, and with a few other women as well, this kind of maiden to mother journey. I haven't had children in this lifetime, and I don't think I will necessarily, but it's still a very important kind of threshold to cross through, this kind of rite of passage. And so for me, it's been really the creation of this business, the creation of my business and myself, and stepping into this more leadership role, this mother archetype role, mothering my business and or
You're,
not mothering my
yeah, you're
clients, but
birthing.
holding that space, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
No,
birthing
I
a
love
movement
that.
of,
And it's so important. It's something that we really need. Women, we are society and generationally and what have you. There's been a lot that's been, I would say, smothering that freedom of embracing yourself as an aging woman, if you will. I love this topic and I love that you're embracing it and you're going after it. And I think it's just very important. I'm curious now, is there one thing that you would share with listeners that you feel like if they could make that one little change, it would help them get that much closer to their own success?
I feel like a habit. Are you thinking like a habit?
Or even that,
Like
do
something.
you have any habits that you've adopted that help keep you successful, would you say?
The first thing that actually came up for me is practicing gratitude, a gratitude journal. Only because there's many reasons, but we get so focused on fixating on the things that we don't have or what's not working in our life. And so this is a way of neuroplasticity, right? Of slowly reprogramming the brain to really focus on and give our attention to everything that we do have in life and to all the things that are working in our life. So it could even be like celebrating yourself for something or writing down everything you're grateful for every day. But that is just, it's such a perspective shift. And that has been hugely helpful for me. Absolutely. And I think that when we can get that perspective shift and we're looking for all the things that are wonderful and working and that we're grateful for, again, it keeps our heart open. It keeps us wanting to connect with people and it keeps us wanting to stay connected to life and not to push life
Yes.
away. So a big part of the tantric disciplines that I followed is about how can we stay in love with life and embrace and say yes, not just to the wins and all the wonderful things, but how can we say yes and stay open when things are challenging and things are painful and
Yes.
things aren't working, right? So it's this kind of non-dual approach where our pain is sacred and our pleasure is sacred. Our body is sacred. Our spirit is sacred. Our sexuality is sacred. Everything just by way of its existence is inherently divine. And I love that concept. And I love applying that to the realms of sexuality or just the day-to-day life, really walking through and understanding how all of it in some way, shape, or form is sacred and that we can keep saying yes to it again and again.
Mm. I think that's great. I have to say, the gratitude journal is something that I used when I was deep in grief, and that made a huge difference in helping get through that. Yes, a gratitude journal, especially going through difficult times, is really a great piece of advice to add. But not only in difficult times, like you said, in those just all the time, to keep your focus in that. Okay, so I'm curious, what keeps you going during your times of struggle?
I know that when I'm really struggling, even though it's cliche, it's that adage, what we resist persists.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm if I'm in a place where I'm really struggling, I have to get to this point of surrender, of almost like kneeling down, arms up, being like, okay, yes, and just fully surrendering to what is and allowing that resistance to melt away. And they go hand, like when I surrender, the resistance kind of melts. And then what I do to start to come out of it once I've surrendered and once I've been like, this is it, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to fully be with what is. First, I have to feel what's there. So my resistance is not wanting to feel what's actually there. I'm scared of it. It feels so uncomfortable. I feel like if I feel it, if I start crying, I'm never going to stop. And so I'll go through a phase of distracting myself or procrastination and distraction. It's like when I know that I'm really procrastinating and distracting myself, then there's something that I'm not wanting to look at. There's something inside of me that I'm resisting or that I'm not wanting to feel. So then I accept, okay, this is where I'm at. And I surrender to whatever's there. And then I let myself feel it and I move the energy. So really intense emotions, energy in motion. It's just energy in the body. And we don't have to be at the mercy to it. we can move the energy through our bodies. And this is another thing I do with my clients. I teach them to vibrate their emotional body. So vibrating your emotional body really is, you might have to move your physical body. You may have to scream into your hand. You may have to put on the most angriest music that you've ever, the music that really expresses the anger, and turn on Rage Against the Machine. That's a great one for me when I'm outraged at the world and society and the government, that we're still doing things and it's just so infuriating. I'll put on some really angry music and I will dance it out and I will stomp it out and I will just move my body, move the energy.
Yes.
If it's grief, maybe it's going to the ocean and being next to bodies of water and giving it back to my grief, giving it to the ocean, or allowing the ocean to take it, allowing the earth to take it. But that's really my practices when I'm in a space and when I struggle. The stagnancy is what kills me. The not feeling, the resisting to what I need to feel and move is it's what blocks me and what keeps me there so much longer. And then the moment it's like, oh, I got to take care of myself right now. I got to move this energy through my body. I get through it. And just always knowing that there's the other side to that. That's like really important. In fact, what was another thing that would be like such a key piece of advice for anyone listening that feels stagnant, that feels stuck, that feels scared to take a step, or is dealing with things that feel really challenging or overwhelming, is to really go into that space of surrender and then get into your body and move it. Just move that energy through your body, move the emotions through your body.
Such a
And
good
then there's
answer.
space
Thank you
again,
for that.
right?
Thank
Yeah, and then there's space again.
Yes,
Once we
there's
move it through
space
the body,
again.
there's spaciousness. And then we can call something
Yes, you
else
can
in,
feel
right?
that. Mhm, mhm. I love that answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So before we
Yeah.
wrap up, I want to ask you, because I love to hear what people answer with this question. So
Sure.
what are you sure of in life?
What am I sure of in life? That the only way out is through.
Ooh, isn't that true? Yes, life has
And
taught me the
that
same.
just came. Yes, yes. I mean, that I'm sure of. Like, I've played a lot of games with myself, just try and skirt and all these kind of things, but just realizing that the only way out is through.
It's such a good answer. It's so true. Now, Kristin, before we go, is there anything that I haven't asked about or anything happening with your work that you would want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, actually, I've been working one-on-one with clients for over 3 years now, and I'm finally getting together an online course. So
Ooh,
that
great.
I'm super, super excited about. The working title is Soulful Pleasure, a woman's journey to spiritual and sexual empowerment. So this is going to be an 8-week online course where we look at a lot of the things that we've been talking about today, everything from getting back into our bodies and feeling deep radical acceptance of our bodies, and really working through body shame and body image stuff, which again was a big part of my journey and coming home to my body, which would be more in these lower chakras, and then all the way through to really finding our soul essence, our soul gifts, and our unique creative expression through the power of harnessing our sexuality and liberating and just working through that fear, that shame, that guilt that we hold around our bodies and our
Yes.
sexuality. And when we can come out of that and unshackle ourselves from the fear, shame, and guilt, there's so much energy and life force and power and creativity on the other side of that. And yeah, so that's really the basis of the program that I'm developing that I'll be launching in a couple of months. So I'm super, super excited. Of
I'm
course, I
gonna
still do one-on-one work with women, but yeah, so that's what I've got brewing.
It's important. It's really important. This is what the program that you're putting out there and the coaching that you're doing is something that too many women out there need. Really, just too many of us need. And what we need is this shift to get us in that right mindset where we're feeling amazing about our own selves, our own bodies, and we take away all that judgment that has been handed over to us by thousands of people, all the different people
Thousands of
throughout our
years
life.
of
media.
Oh, yeah, thousands of years of patriarchy.
So, so really important work. So I'll make sure to have your website in the show notes,
Yes,
and
awesome.
any other contact information that you'd like to have on there, I'll include. So anyone can go ahead and find Kristin through there. And you are taking additional clients if people are interested in
I
one-on-one?
am, yeah,
Great.
I definitely have one-on-one spaces available. And yeah, if anyone wants to get in contact with me, like all my details will be on the website. And from there, I can add you to my email list and I will let you know about, when I'm going to be launching probably in the beginning of June, my online course, which is actually going to have a live component as well. So it's going to be 8 weeks, but we'll have two live calls a week, plus the information and homework and practices. I mean, it's also just going to be such a sacred coven of women to come together and to really find that sense of community, sisterhood, empowerment, and aliveness, right? We want to feel that aliveness. We want to feel confident. We want to feel resourced to do the things that we really want to do, especially in midlife. Like, I think women, I've never felt more confident, more secure, more excited, more sexual than I have now in this moment. And so I love aging. I love getting older. I would never want to go back to being in my 20s again because it
Getting
gets
it.
better and better. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
the space that I'm creating, is going to definitely be for women like us that just want to be able to own it more and to be seen and to see in this really incredible way.
Really special. It's very exciting. So congratulations to you for that. And thank you again for joining us, Kristin. This was wonderful.
So lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
I loved Kristin's story. There are so many great takeaways. I love the story of her being exposed to yoga through her mom. There are two great things to note from this story. The first is the fact that it was mom that brought the idea of the yoga class to Kristin. She was not looking for yoga herself or had any plans to try it, but because her mom didn't want to go alone, Kristin went with her, and through that, she found a whole new world unfold before her. This is an important example of what can happen when you open yourself up to new experiences. When you are willing to say yes, even to something that you haven't considered or had a desire for, just to try it out or help someone else, you just never know where a new door can lead. I can think of multiple experiences in my own life where I tagged along with someone else, going only for them with no desire of the activity personally, only to find that this new experience completely opened up a new door of exploration within myself. There is just so much out there that we don't know, and we tend to make snap judgments about things we don't know a lot about. Make a promise to yourself that you'll be that friend who says yes. Support your loved ones in checking out their interests and keep your mind open to the possibilities. You never know where they might lead. The second thing to note from the mom yoga story is that mom planted that seed of, you'd be really good at this. This is a huge gift from mom. Every person listening has the capacity to give such a gift to others. Planting the seed is a powerful tool. Each and every one of us holds tremendous power to plant the right kind of seeds into other people's minds. Those are you would be so great at this. This is an amazing strength of yours. You seem to light up anytime I see you doing this. Giving people those positive affirmations makes a huge difference in their lives. On the flip side of this, we need to be aware of the negative seeds we may be planting or that others plant within our own selves. Bad seeds tend to take root even faster than the good ones. What seeds have other people planted in you that you have grown when they should have been starved? Let's bring awareness to this. Shake off the negative seeds that don't serve you and be sure to let the sunlight in on those that do. Bring awareness to the seeds that we are watering in our own minds and in the minds of others. I absolutely loved what Kristin had to say about reclaiming her power through her sacred sexuality. She's saying that your sexuality, your pleasure, your body, it is there for you. Its purpose is to serve you, not to attract another person. She learned to shift how she felt about her body, feeling gratitude and connecting with herself at a level that was so much deeper than what she looked like, how much she weighed, or how she compared herself with others. This is so powerful. How many of us have been going through life being mean to our bodies, nitpicking on all of the little things we wish we could change, as opposed to being in awe of everything that is going right. I experienced this amazing body meditation during a conference one year, and it absolutely transformed how I feel about my body. It made me realize how horribly I treated my own body, the way I talked to myself, the level of ingratitude I shared for this miraculous vessel that is carrying me through life was horrifying. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for this shift of consciousness. Spend a few minutes marveling at the amazing workings of your body. The heart that pumps your blood, the arms that allow you to hug, the legs that carry you where you want to go. This body is everything. Literally, it is your everything. We only get one body to inhabit. Why in the world do we choose to berate it? When you stop to think about it, you can find gratitude for every body part. I suggest listing the things about your body that you are grateful for in your gratitude journal. The gratitude journal is an excellent practice that is another common thread amongst these discussions about success and fulfillment. Practicing gratitude is a form of neuroplasticity, a reprogramming of your brain to give focus and attention to all of the things that are working in your life. It is so easy to get caught up on focusing on all of the things that have gone wrong or didn't go exactly as you'd hoped. Our brains naturally go in this direction, making us miserable and unhappy, but you can train your brain in a different direction, and you can do that through practicing gratitude. Every day, write down what you were grateful for in that day. As you write them down, really feel the gratitude for each thing. And it can be as simple as being able to breathe freely through the day. The fact the sun came out, a flower bloomed, you have a warm bed to sleep in, you have a device that allows you to listen to this very podcast. Feel the gratitude and let it envelop you. This practice will change your life. Life flows where your focus goes. I appreciate that Kristin reminds us there are so many ways to live life. There is not just one way to do life, or only one way to do a relationship, or only one way to do love. There are so many amazing options and varieties of types of life out there. It's all about finding the one that is right for you. I think for many people, we get stuck on the life we grew up with, as if that's the only option. And when life doesn't turn out exactly like we thought, we think that correlates to failure. But there is no failure in life. There is only learning. Learn from your previous experiences and create the way of life you want to live moving forward. What is most important is that you are focusing in on what is the right way to live life for you. This is your life. What do you want it to look like? Create that. Forget what everyone else is doing and do you. For Kristin, success is believing in herself, giving herself the belief and permission to turn her passion into a living. She fully embraced and owned what she wanted to do, and she went out and did it. So inspiring, and an example we can all learn from. Kristin was able to take that leap of faith because of the trust she has developed within her. She shares that she does this through being present in her body, allowing herself to really listen and feel where her energy is taking her. This is important because we so often don't take the time to listen to our own bodies, which often is giving us the answers. Spend time with your quiet self. Spend time tuning in and really listening to what your body and your soul are telling you. As Kristin put it, find that golden thread that is calling us places. When that thread pulls on your soul, please take the time to stop and listen. Kristin shares the importance of keeping the right perspective in life. We are only here for a short blip. Most things are not worth getting super serious about. Life really is one big experiment. Try to take the playful approach when you find yourself getting too serious. As Kristin suggests, spending time in nature can help get our head in that right perspective. Being in nature, experiencing the miracle of this world up close and personal, it reminds you of just how small we are and how big and vast this world is. Being in nature is also a natural mood enhancer. Just being surrounded by nature reduces anger, fear, stress, blood pressure, heart rate, stress hormones, and increases your pleasant feelings, making you feel better emotionally. Nature is your free therapy. I love how Kristin put it. When things get too overwhelming, get yourself outside and remind yourself that we are all just riding on this huge orbiting star in outer space. Kristin gave great advice for those considering new opportunities or avenues. Find people that are doing what you want to be doing. Reach out and network with them. See if they'd be willing to answer some questions. Find out what the day-to-day looks like. Ask them what they love and, more importantly, what they hate about their work. If they could change anything about what they do, what would it be? What are their greatest struggles? These conversations will give you great insight into whether or not this is something you want to pursue. It's best to get as much information as possible and make sure it feels right inside, that it's pinging that internal tuning fork and telling you this is the direction you are supposed to take. And as Kristin suggests, just have conversations with people. Talk to people you meet at the coffee shop, in line at the store, on an airplane. Strike up conversations, as you never know what door may open. Ask people questions that are more apt to create a connection, like, what are you most excited about right now? What are you feeling the most challenged with right now? For what do you feel the most grateful? What's the best thing that happened to you this past year? People love to talk about themselves, and any of these questions will get someone to open and help create that connection. I have heard from countless people how some of their greatest opportunities came from these chance encounters where they simply opened up to talking with a stranger. Who knows what you could learn from the next person that you randomly encounter? Why not give it a try and find out? Kristin also made a comment about how we need to keep our eyes open and our hearts open. I thought this was important because we so often close our hearts in certain areas when we experience hurt and trauma in life. It can feel easier to close the heart, to not allow that hurt availability in. But in reality, you're only cutting yourself off from all the joy that life has to offer. When we don't have the right tools to deal with the past trauma, it is understandable that it shuts something down in our heart. It is normal and human, but it is not healthy. This is not the way. Keeping the blinders on, keeping your heart closed off, is not keeping you from getting hurt. It is actually keeping you in the hurt. Think about your own experiences. What have you been closing your heart to? What have you had blinders on about? It's time to bring awareness to where these blocks are and start opening those doors and cracking those windows in the places where we have shut down. A great place to start is with our childhood stories. As Kristin wisely brought up, our parents have both gifted and burdened us. And any parents are currently doing that to their own children, as I am. I'm sorry, my loves. Such is the cycle of life. Growing up, we created all kinds of stories and changed ourselves in different ways to try and get the love and praise every person craves. It's important that we start looking at the programming, the knee-jerk reactions we have without realizing why, the triggers that set you off without explanation. Where do these things come from? Bring awareness the next time you find yourself reacting stronger than the situation warrants. Bring awareness the next time you are unnecessarily harsh to yourself or to someone else. Ask yourself why you are reacting this way. Where does it come from? What is the story you are telling yourself? Is this belief really yours, or does it belong to someone else? If you don't start looking at these things, they will continue to have control over you and block you from what you want to do and how you want to feel. Spend the time learning to understand yourself and find that radical acceptance. Let all those negative stories and beliefs fall away and create a new and much more beautiful relationship with yourself. The same goes with the stories we tell ourselves about our bodies. The way we feel about our bodies is a gross conditioning from youth being blasted at you from every side by a variety of mediums. We are bombarded with messages growing up that this is the way you are supposed to look, and everyone seems to have an opinion regardless of how you do look. I suggest we all stop worrying about what other people are thinking. As we've discussed in previous episodes, critical and judgmental people have the most criticism and judgment for themselves. Why are we allowing unhappy people to impact our own decisions and judgments about ourselves? I say no more. Let's all learn from Kristin's story, work through that fear, that shame, that guilt that we hold around our bodies, and unshackle ourselves. There is so much energy, life force, power, and creativity that comes from finding that radical acceptance of ourselves. And for anyone who does not like it, you can just forget them, because you are liberated. You are the only one who gets to define the uniqueness that is you. As Kristin said, everything, just by way of its existence, is inherently divine. I found Kristin's story about the silent retreat and her lessons from that retreat very powerful. Not only did she really get to know herself and understand herself, what a gift, but she learned how to surrender. She learned how to accept. How many experiences in life are so much harder because we fight them? And the fighting and resisting, how does that make you feel? Maybe a little bit crazy, right? A little like trying to swim upstream. What if we were able to surrender to the situation, accept it, sit in the uncomfortableness and learn from it? Here you are. This is where you are right now. Sit still and surrender into what is. For what we resist persists. Our resistance is the fear of what is there. So we distract and procrastinate when we don't want to deal or feel. And then nothing gets better. And then we ask ourselves, why? What if instead you surrender? Fall to your knees. You'll find that the earth will catch you. Let all the feels flow through. Move the energy through your body so you don't have to be at the mercy to it. Take care of that energy. Move through those feelings and emotions, and then really get into your body and move it. The only way out is through. Finally, I loved Kristin's feelings on aging. She is all about embracing aging and finding that confidence, that resourcefulness, and empowerment that comes from owning who you are. That is what this podcast is all about. Celebrating ourselves as we age. The wisdom, the understanding, the know-how to go out and succeed at all of these amazing things that people are doing in the second half of life. We are here for it. It is time to embrace yourself as you are and bring forth that confidence, security, and excitement to every endeavor moving forward, regardless of the year on your birth certificate. That is my wish for us all, that we will be feeling that fresh blood all through life at every age. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. If you liked today's episode, please consider giving us a like and sharing with a friend. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.